It's Artifacts, celebrating its 10th year, bringing the arts in the Minneapolis area to you. On this Bring It Home edition, we've got Duck Wrangler, yes, Duck Wrangler, Danny Lord, and Wally the Duck. From Cirque to Soleil, a composer and a vice president for a creation, a developer of the new El Colegio school, and a scene from Who Wants to Marry a Survivor at the Brave New Workshop. Plus, a listen back to Mullivan's Edge. All this and more on Artifacts August 2000. Here's your host, Phill Lindsay.
Well, welcome to the show. Theater, music, dance, the visual and media arts, literature and writing. These are the forms we usually think of as the arts. But today, let's remember the variety arts as well. Storytelling, mime, magic, juggling, comedy. A friend recently described these as the beginnings of the arts, and it makes sense. Gathered around the evening's campfire, telling the day's story, miming, perhaps dancing the drama of the day's hunt, or the encounter with the clan from over the hill, or the rhythm of planting the season's crop. And still today, these forms are among the most accessible, often outdoors, quite often free, readily presented at community functions. They typically are interactive and participatory. And what's the big deal when the circus comes to town? Well, pretty much the same as for millennia. People, stories, incredible feats, even critters from afar. On this edition, we'll meet some folks involved with the variety arts. We'll also talk about the new El Colegio school opening in South Minneapolis. I'll be back with the Imperial Flying Fool himself after this clip from Scooter's Nutrition Show. Our next guest is the one on the unicycle. There's some debate about the other guy in that other striped shirt.
Hey, I missed you. We've got a new routine, but we need another juggler.
Well, what routine is that?
Routine 22. That's the one I
What's the matter? First, this new kid comes in here, slumping, yawning. She's got all the energy of a rock, eating pop and donuts right in my face. And you, what's your excuse? What's the problem with you? I mean, she's just eating junk food for breakfast. What's your excuse?
Well, I just didn't have time to eat breakfast this morning. I'm a busy guy.
Well, those were the days, and here to recap that and talk about what he's doing now, my next guest is Danny Lord and friend. That's right, just flying in from the coast here. Very good. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Look at this guy here. Well, we'll catch up on who the heck the duck is. Danny Lord and I worked together some years back with a whole crowd of variety artists here in the Twin Cities, a troupe called Sideshow. Danny, it's great to have you back.
Well, glad to be here.
That's right.
Better check your hand there. I was just holding the deck.
Oh, man, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Now, who is this anyhow?
Well, this is Walden. I keep looking. I'm going to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, we can talk to the duck.
Well, we could. This is Walden Pond, and we call him Wally.
Wally?
Yeah, we're pretty thorough about that. Anyway, I just named him Walden Pond, but we call him mostly Wally.
I think he wants to bond with me here.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, does he do that Aflac commercial?
No.
He get residuals.
I guess he would, but he was the
right.
stunt double for Babe Goes to the City.
Really?
I recognize him from the profile there, you know.
Oh, okay, yeah. He had lines in that, right? Well, no, you're working with the duck, though.
Yeah, I'm working
All
with
right.
the duck. Well, I do a show where I do 3 silent shows a day, and then I do a duck act. I call it Danny's 3D show.
Yeah?
And it's Danny's duck.
No, is the duck in the silent show too?
No. Well, I put him in the background because
Right.
people are drawn to him like a magnet.
Okay, so you do basically a silent show.
Yeah, you would think.
And
yeah.
how long is the show? What do you put in it? What are the elements of your show?
Ooh, let's see. I do 45 minutes of just, some monkey stunts and audience participation,
Right.
and I fleece them and turn them loose. I do a little pickpocketing and embarrass the fact that they lost their valuables.
Yeah. So magic is part of it?
Yeah.
See, I know you also
little
as a-
sight gigs, a lot of sight gigs.
Yeah.
A lot of, like George Carl or Buster Keaton or anything like that.
Well, in the clip we just saw, too, I mean, there was a lot of
Yeah.
juggling there. You're not juggling as much?
Nah, I heard you go blind from that. You're out there somewhere, aren't you, Phil?
Well, actually, what you do that, and then you do television. So there's really no hope at all.
right.
So
No,
then- but you
can't swing a dead clown in Minneapolis, at least, without hitting a juggler. So,
lot of them
I
still
mean, now,
around.
how many people out there have a God-blessed duck act?
Well, you're a duck wrangler. Is
Yeah,
what you
duck
are.
wrangler.
Duck
I am a
wrangler.
duck
Just
wrangler.
the one duck, though.
One duck, yeah.
Yeah.
2 ducks would be a mess. I live in New York City in an apartment.
They probably have a quota. They got rent control with 1 duck, and that's
Yeah.
about it. Tail of the duck, though. Drums?
Tail of the duck.
Drums?
Drums.
Okay.
Well, that's it. Yeah, well, Phil's referring to the fact that before the set here we talked about Wally plays the drum, and should we just, we improvise it because we forgot the drum in the car today, but we have one of these classic, what is this? This is from Cuba. Oh, look, it has made me a little Elian. Anyway.
I think this is what he was discovering.
Yes, it was when he was floating it. Anyway, now Wally here is just going to give some of you Native Americans out there a little swell in the heart and kind of bring me back here to Minneapolis and
Yeah.
share a good moment with you.
All right,
Wally.
Wally.
Ready? Okay.
All right. That's enough of the drumming.
All right.
Don't forget your day job.
Yeah, no.
So how do you travel with the duck? I mean, how do you do it? Yeah, you've been fed. You don't want my thumb.
yeah.
How do you travel with the duck? I mean, because you travel around the country
Yeah,
doing your shows.
I have a cage in the van,
Yeah?
and I've done a lot of driving. I haven't really gone. I keep going for the little feathers.
It's summer. I'm molting.
Yes. I haven't flown. I haven't flown because most airlines want to put them in the
the
hole.
bay there, yeah.
And I insist on bringing him with
Gotta
me.
buy a
because,
seat then,
Well,
probably.
he's the act, and I would
Yeah.
hate to find him dead on the
He'd
tarmac.
probably be in first class, and you'd be back in steerage
Yeah,
or something.
that's true.
like that.
There are places in New York City that don't let me in unless I've got the duck, or I can be traveling someplace.
You mean like
and-
fancy clubs? If you're not with the duck, you don't get in?
Well, I won't say fancy clubs, but some places, some restaurants, places like that. I'll go and they go, "Where's the duck?" I have to go home get the duck.
Get the
bring
duck, and then you
back,
get
yeah.
your table.
And he
Now,
gets a
you're
little
based
seat.
in New York. Is that you call that home now?
Yeah.
Originally from the Twin Cities.
Yep.
Yeah.
Born, raised in Minneapolis.
Well, we did a ton of
Hey,
shows
yeah.
right here. There's hardly a street corner I go by when I don't remember.
Right,
doing
I know
something.
it's always memory lane, except that they're
Yeah.
knocking the streets wider and
Yeah,
everybody's-
buildings are getting taller.
Oh, everybody's wearing bubbles when they ride bicycles. I just think that they should thin the gene pool a little bit and just take those things off.
Well, I think they're taking care of that with the rest of us pedestrians, I've noticed. Yeah. Well, now, what kind of shows are you doing? You're doing what I would call street shows. You're doing festivals. You're doing what other kinds of shows?
Yeah, that's kind of it. Corporate things, trade
Yeah.
shows, and I do a stage act wherever I can possibly throw it. But I do a lot of Renaissance fairs. Still.
Okay, yeah.
I've done those for a number of years.
Well, you once told me that they're Renaissance festivals
Yes.
because they're not fair at all.
No, they aren't.
That was your line.
That was.
So do you do the circuit? I mean, how many of those do you do in a year?
Ooh, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Really?
This year. I'm doing one in
As we're
Wisconsin
taping, you're
right
doing
now.
what's that?
I'm doing one in Wisconsin now that's 9 weekends, and then I go on to another 8-weekend one out in Pennsylvania, but they do a lot of 3-day
Okay.
deals.
I know
Friday,
you,
Saturday, Sunday.
You used to do the Boston one.
Yep.
All right. And Florida?
And Florida, and I've done 20 years in the one that's right on the state line between Illinois and Wisconsin. I did that.
Yeah. Well, Richards? Is that?
King Richard's
King
Fair,
Richard's
yeah,
Fair,
yep,
yeah.
yep.
I went down and auditioned once.
I went with you. That's how.
Was that us?
That was us.
You made it and I didn't. Now you're working with a duck.
Now I'm working with
a
a
happy
duck.
Man.
What are we
Well,
gonna do?
These are your props.
These are props.
What
Look at
happens?
that.
What is this about? You have a live duck.
Well, this is just to show people that, everybody out there in old TV land wants to just reach right out there
What's a
and
cute
touch
little
the
duck?
Look at him, look at that, look at that.
No. That's
Look at that. All of
abuse.
those are killing blows, mind you.
No.
Look at that.
Oh, my
And it's
God,
a
go
little,
for the
and a
eyes.
little baby duck too. That means
Man.
that Wally is a cannibal, isn't it?
Oh,
And these are
where's-
props. These are props
where's-
within our show.
Pet her when you need 'em.
Wally actually makes the block of wood fall off the bottle. I would be tempted to do that for your viewing audience, but sometimes it takes up to 3 hours. And so,
Learn your
when you've only
lines,
got
Wally.
12 minutes, what are you going to do?
I want to ask you a semi-serious question because you and I go back far enough when the comedy were
Well, we were like in the La Brea tar pits with typewriters,
Ralph
pumping it
Nader
out. We
was
were
a
before
kid.
Penn and Teller.
Yes, indeed. Street theater, new vaudeville. What do you see out there? What's the trend? Are people still doing this crazy, wild variety stuff as they used to, or has it changed? What do you
It's gotten
see?
really corporate. You
Has
see
it?
things like Cirque, Soleil, when
well,
they
they're in
first
town.
when
Look
they
at they're on
first-
this show.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, when they first came out, I thought they were great, but I
Did you
think
see them when they were doing street?
you know.
Yeah. Well, now they got these $1 million deals.
You know, but I also, in Bare Naked Ladies, and I used to do street shows up in Canada.
You're talking about the musical group?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We used to do all
What
sorts
did
of
they dress like
different
then?
T-shirts, shorts, just like this.
Really? So you got their wardrobe?
Yeah.
All right.
No, I work on my own. This is sort of Calvin Klein.
But in the old days,
The latest in Calvin Klein.
I'm just glad you're dressing yourself. That's a step.
Well, it's a big step up. You
But
know.
now, in those
I'm glad
days-
that breathing's automatic too. You
Not
know.
for everybody. Now, the deal is, in those days, you could go into a comedy club and you could see Tom Arnold was doing his fish act. I don't know if you remember. He used
I
to
was
work
before-
the Fabulous Goldfish Revue. That was his
that's great,
act.
great.
Right here down at the Comedy
God help him.
Gallery.
And where did that get him?
Next to Roseanne. You know. But in those days, and you might see a clown on a comedy stage, you'd see people like us on a comedy stage, and you'd see basically your talking head in front of a microphone. But I sense that's really changed. It's really narrowed down now, that kind of variety circuit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, there's a lot of, you know, like festivals. When you look at anything, you know, anybody who's got pancake festivals or apple festivals and
Right.
things like that in little small towns.
Yeah.
Kind of my feeling is that's what I'd like doing. I like the old medicine show thing.
Yeah.
I'm still for a little bit of the nostalgic twist to exactly what I do. I mean, being 50 at this point, I have to accept my character and who I am and what I'm doing. And
Well, you know, let's go
he's
back.
going to sleep. He's going into a deep,
We're boring
deep
him.
hypnotic
That's
trance.
dangerous in television when the duck goes quiet. Tell you
Well-
what, you were talking about these shows you've been doing.
Yeah.
I want, with the help of our booth people over here, to click in about 11 years back. You got a shot on television.
Yeah.
Why don't you set that up for folks, and we'll take a look here. It's not long. You didn't get a lot of screen time, but
No.
you had lines.
Yeah, yeah. I did a 5 and under for all my children. I actually did 3 episodes. There was another 2 episodes after
Oh, I
that.
didn't realize that. Hold
Yeah.
on now. We'll take a look at that.
Okay, yeah, that was me and some of the clowns from the Big Apple Circus.
So I didn't realize you got called back to that.
Yeah.
You did more than the one show.
Yeah, yeah, we
All
did
right.
a few days in a row, actually.
Very cool.
I sat and did cups and balls for Susan Lucci, and we had a great old time.
She blames you to this day for years getting that Emmy.
Well, I know it. I
right.
instructed her
Well,
not
not
to because
television,
the
though.
build-up. You have to fail miserably a
Yeah.
lot of times, and then when you finally make it, everybody just...
Yeah. What's your favorite kind of place to perform? If you had your choice, I know you've done a stage show. What
Oh,
you
I
put
like
on a nice.
theaters.
You did the thing in Chicago.
Yep.
You put on a
7 weeks.
Yeah,
7
nice
weekends.
run there.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah, I like that focus of audience. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I'll take that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? You're as we're
I'm
taping.
gonna go
here-
and pay my parking meter and
Well, that's
get out of
important.
town
Yeah.
and get back.
Yeah. You're heading back to the fair over in Wisconsin.
Yeah, but I'll stay here this week. You and I'll
Yeah.
get together and have to
That sounds good.
round out.
I
this
want to learn
whole
about the duck more. you
Okay,
know?
yeah, let's
What
go.
other things does the duck do?
What other things does the duck do? Well, he does some cheap parlor tricks. You know, I tell the audience that, you know, he's got an affinity for cards, and he actually finds a card in the deck.
He'll pull it out of the deck?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
kind of
very
cute,
cool.
yeah.
Very cool.
Well, sometimes when he fails, I have to use a stunt double because I don't like
Oh,
to.
you do?
Yeah, well, you know, they're unpredictable. Do you know that Wally's the only duck that I know that's actually gone on to achieve a PhD in criminal justice? And he couldn't find a legitimate place to practice in this country, so I had to join the vaudeville circuit. And I find it remarkable that we're doing this show, taping, in City Hall today because we're just thumbing our webs at all these lawyers.
Now, wait, he's over here. He wants to know me or he wants to hurt me?
He wants to take your ear off.
Oh,
he wants
okay.
to make you look like Van Gogh.
Yeah. All right, well,
no,
that's
he's actually my bodyguard, as I am his.
Yeah.
Everything in the world wants to eat the duck, and I, you know, have to just sort of, you know, put myself in front of
well.
him as he does for me.
You ever wander off on you? I mean, does he ever just take off?
No, he can fly and he swims, and I have a canoe that goes along with him. If you know, we could do like a thing of follow me down the stairs out to the street down here in Minneapolis. Yes, I have a canoe on there, and he follows right along.
So you're just out there outside the Staten Island Ferry? eating the duck,
And the
right?
best joke is a couple of years ago, I bought one of those trolling motors, so you should see the sucker try to keep up. Once you get on the open lake.
You missed a line, you're coming after me.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Danny, I want to thank you for being on here. Thanks for
Well-
bringing these expensive props.
Well, I hope that I have somebody to help me lug this down to the car.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Danny,
so
a pleasure.
better.
Thanks.
It was really more
It's good
fun
to
for
see
me.
you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, we're going to run over to Orr Books in Uptown to read our news bits, but first, here's an art quote from Charles Ives. Stay tuned. And now it's time for the Artifacts News Bits for August 2000. The words of Sophocles from his play Oedipus Rex broke nearly 1,500 years of presentational silence last month at the Roman Colosseum as it reopened. The Italian Culture Ministry intends to recover the theatrical use of the amphitheater with more performances. The Emperor Vespasiano ordered construction of the famous monument in 72 AD. Combat with wild beasts ended there in 523. No neighbors, by the way, complained of noise or traffic problems. The city of Shanghai, China, will build a museum to house the Songzi cultural relics. More than 1,000 artifacts from more than 100 ancient tombs have been unearthed since discovery of the site in the 1950s. The facility should be ready by the end of next year. China's senior political leadership should feel right at home there. Two exhibits, Oaxaca Cuna del Arte and El Poder de la Humanidad, are on view at the Instituto Cultural Mexicano in Washington, D.C. Translated to English, that's Oaxaca Crib of Art and The Power of Humanity. The double show runs through September 14th. Until recently, of course, Mexico endured one-party rule for generations. Rumors to the contrary, Vicente Fox of the insurgent PAN, who can serve only one term as presidente, has no plans to run for office in Minneapolis. Recently elected to the board of the Minnesota Association of Community Theaters are Greg Toltzman from the Corcoran Park Players in South Minneapolis and Joan and Bob Muschler from the Albert Lee Community Theater. St. Paul's John Scallon is also on the board. He will continue as the organization's contact with the National Community Theater Association. Here's an image, by the way, of John prematurely aged in an appearance on Artifacts in May of 1995. And that's the Artifacts News Bits for August 2000. Thanks to Orr Books, an independent bookstore in uptown Minneapolis, serving the reading public since 1973. Next up, our Art Fact, this time from the State Fair. Well, we're sitting here with Lynn Heward, Vice President Creation, Cirque du Soleil.
That's right.
And Violaine Corradi, composer.
Yes.
And before we go on, it sounds biblical what you do, Vice President Creation. I mean, is this part of the Apocrypha?
I spell it with a small c.
Oh, you do, actually?
Yes,
okay.
I do spell it with a small c.
But given the regard with which people have for Cirque du Soleil, I mean, this must be a heady job. I mean, what is it that you do?
I like to say I'm sort of a jack of all trades. I dabble in casting of shows, training programs for shows to prepare the artists for the shows, selection of creators. We call our designers creators, and that has to do a lot with the French translation. It's not to be pretentious or anything, but we translate it into English as creators. Making the team work together. Concepteur or créateur.
Okay, so more in terms of the conceptualizing of the show.
Exactly. For us, it's more than designing. It's more than just moving little pieces of a puzzle around. It's coming up with what we like to call the obscure inkling that's eventually going to become the show.
The kernel, the piece of sand that becomes pearl.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. So you kind of inside out, you grow it around
exactly.
the concept, the vision.
Exactly. It's really a process of collective creativity. Mm-hmm. A show could not be a show without a collection of creators and also a collection of artists or performers who want to contribute to that same creative process.
And they're around the table there to some extent?
The creators are around the table, and the artists are hopefully downstairs in the studio offering inspiration to the creators. That's what's a little bit unique about the process and how we take the process, regardless of who the players are, who the artists are, or who the creators are in place. It's this mutual feedback that's going on. And all of these obscure inklings, as we like to call them, can come from society, can come from politics, it can come from something that happened 300 years ago, and it can come from something that happened the day before yesterday.
You figure out a way then to help tell that story, wherever the inkling comes from.
how
in a
to,
unique way for an audience.
more than to tell a story, how to develop a theme,
Okay.
which allows the audience enough latitude to use its own imagination to read their own story
So
out
there's
of
a lot of
it.
subjectivity to what I
yes.
was calling a story, but to the theme, to the...
Exactly. Well, subjectivity, individual subjectivity on the part of the viewer of the show, of the spectator of the show. I don't think we try to impose
Yeah.
a storyline. Each person is there and reads it on his or her own level.
Sure. I used to work with mimes, and they would often do the same. I mean, there's
Exactly.
a metaphor to their movement, perhaps, but it was up to the audience to complete that.
And I think you're touching on an important thing, which is the roots of Cirque, which is really in street performance, related to Saltimbanque, which is also the name of another Cirque du Soleil show. Saltimbanque were street performers in Italy in the 14th, 15th century, around the time of Commedia dell'arte. And that's exactly what they were doing, is they were playing, etc., but they were also invoking the imagination of the people around them, the spectators.
With stock characters and stock themes, perhaps, but again,
Right.
touching on those political or contemporary themes.
Exactly, exactly.
And that's a nice transition, because the lady with you here is a composer, and of course you personally have a bit of an Italian background.
Well, actually, I was born in Trieste, in Italy.
Mhm.
My father was Italian, but my mother is Canadian, from
Ah.
Montreal, yes.
And you ended up in Montreal.
Oh, yes, because of my mother.
Yeah.
And my father was an orchestra conductor, my mother an opera singer, so my sister and I were sort of born into it, born making music, and it was the obvious path.
And she happens to be involved in the Saltimbanque.
Yes, actually she started with Cirque in '94 as a singer for the Allegria show, and now she loves it so much she stayed with Cirque and is doing touring Saltimbanco, and they're here now in the States and going back to Asia for another year.
Ah. And now how did you get involved with Cirque?
Well, through my sister, somehow I had wind that Cirque du Soleil was looking for composers. So I wrote about a 20 minutes demo expressively for Cirque, imagining numbers, and I submitted the tape to Lynn. And many, many months later, I received a phone call from Lynn, actually, and where we were they had 4 candidates. They were asking us to write again with a specific video with 3 numbers. So we had 2 weeks to do this, I remember. And then I received the most wonderful phone call of my life.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great.
Yeah.
How would you describe the music that you do and that you work with, just in general terms?
Well, actually, I was exploring world beat music for the past 10 years. I have a classical background, and I explored also alternative rock, all kinds of music, but really my specialty is world. I'm interested in ethnic music, traditional music, but the fusion of tradition with modern technology and modern sound. So that's what you'll hear with Ravillon. I'm using keyboards, but also traditional instruments like cello, violin, oboe, the ancestor of the oboe, all kinds of winds instrument, percussion, live percussion, drums.
So you have live musicians.
Oh yes, we have 7 musicians and 2 singers.
All right.
Yes.
Now, is there any tape overlaid, or
No.
it's all so the
Everything
music
is,
that people hear
yeah.
when they come to see
Oh
the
yes,
show?
and it has to be like this because the numbers move all the time. You never can see the same show twice when you come and see Cirque.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the relationship between the musicians and the performers, because they're doing things that are both interesting but also rather intricate. And I know as a performer that things change. I mean, whether the rhythm just is a little faster or slower or whatever. Are those musicians tuned in step by step with the performers?
Yes, somehow. Well, a certain section of the music will accompany this. How can you say this in English? This section of a number, and if it takes longer to make that acrobatic move, they have to loop
Sure.
around.
Are the
And then-
performers at all, perchance, actually timing their movement to the music?
Definitely.
Are they counting on, I don't know exactly what we'll see in the show, but
depending on
Yeah.
which number. Sometimes it's just like long segments where they know they have that time to do it, and
Sure.
the musicians follow what's happening. But some other numbers, like Victor Key, is really timed. He's counting
Choreographed.
To the second
Yeah.
what's going on. Our juggler.
Yep. I like jugglers.
Oh,
They're good
we
folks.
have a great one.
Don't turn your back on them, though. Lynn, I know that part of the origin that you mentioned this with Cirque is street performance. What connection, what resonance or echoes might there still be that one would see from the street into these, let's face it, fairly lavish productions now?
It's easy to see. The most physical representation of our street performance background is the big top itself.
Yeah.
The big yellow and blue big top in this era of very elaborate theaters, as in Las Vegas or New York or any of the major centers. We've made a choice to do our flagship shows, because really our North American touring show is still Cirque du Soleil's flagship, and travel from one city to the other. Why do we do that? Because this is the one place where we control the entire environment. From the minute the person walks up to the ticket wicket to buy a ticket, to the time he walks through the concession tent, into the big top, and as he walks down the stairs into the big top, the environment is otherworldly, and we're able to control that environment. And it's really transporting these people to another environment, to another time, to another culture, to another place. That's important in this type of, let's call it, elaborate street performance. And then you'll see it coming off in a multitude of small ways. It depends a lot on the show. I mean, Alegria still has a fire dancer, and of course, the founder of Cirque du Soleil was a fire eater. Guy Laliberté was a fire eater. You'll still see in this show we have the occurrence of stilts. Our creative director, Gilles St. Croix, was a stilt walker, and as a matter of fact, he walked the full distance from Bay St. Paul to Quebec City, which is 70 or 80 kilometers, on 6-foot stilts. Okay.
Had he done something wrong, or was this just
No,
a choice?
this was when the company was first being founded, and it was
Fantastic.
publicity and
Yeah.
way to get money and all of this
Sure.
kind of stuff. So each one of our shows has these funny little reoccurrences that pop back in
Yeah.
to the context of the show. But the big top, I would say, itself and its imposition on a community, its all-encompassing reception of its spectators, etc., is also has a root in our street performance. It's not just circus,
That's
it's
good to
really
hear, yeah.
street performance.
Violaine, when the audience begins to clap or get some way involved, do the musicians sometimes respond in a way? Do they have that ability?
I guess in the interpretation of the music, because within the 2 hours of music that were written, it has to be very, very synchronized to what's going on. The music will be stretched or shortened depending on what happens with the acrobats. When it comes to the audience, yes, during the clown acts and
Because there's some interaction, I would
yes,
expect. Yeah.
there are very spontaneous things that
Yeah.
can happen. So this would be the moments where it could happen.
That's great. Dre Leon. And I should just get right down to it and pronounce it like a Minnesotan. Dre Leon.
Right.
What's the story? What will people encounter?
Well, the Rallion is at the same time one of the newest concepts of Cirque du Soleil and also one of the oldest. Strange to say that. In 1987, Guy Laliberté, founder of Cirque du Soleil, and a fellow by the name of Guy Caron, who was actually the director of this show, went off to China. And they were much surprised, agreeably, by the profound tradition of acrobatics in China. We're babies at it compared to these guys. They've been doing it for 2,000 to 3,000 years.
Yeah.
And so it was an idea that was sort of simmering in the back of the brain. And when it came time to do the Rallion in 1998, Guy Laliberté had chosen Guy Caron as the director because we use different directors and different creators. And the two of them sat down, and it was like listening to two heads on the same body saying, boy, I've always wanted to do this show and collaborate with the Chinese. So we started putting together a creative team. We knew that Violaine at that point in time was very world beat, percussion. If I were to talk from my point of view about her music, she uses a lot of percussion styles, which is great for transmitting what we're having to do acrobatically. And she also uses a lot of vocal styles. So we were looking to get together, to put together a creative team which would allow us to develop this age-old tradition in a more theatrical approach, which is typical to Cirque du Soleil. So we put together the new team. We went over to China, and even Violaine accompanied us. All the creators went over to China and selected the acrobats from China. The musicians, however, for example, the group that Violaine, and most of our musicians are still coming from Quebec. There are a few Americans, and I think Richard is the band leader is an American. But we have elements from all around the world. We have a couple of Brazilians in this show. We have a Bulgarian. We have a Ukrainian. The juggler is Ukrainian. He's great. You'll like him. So it became a very worldly show. It was touched off by this fascination with Eastern acrobatics, but it's become very worldly, and it's linked together. The story isn't a lengthy story, and it's not something that imposes itself, but it's basically about how the four elements, water, earth, fire, and which one am I missing?
Wind.
Air. So air,
Yeah.
we call it air, bind together mankind wherever he is on the planet.
Sounds like a wonderful
And
universal story.
And it is. It's a very universal story. And so the show evolved from being, we were going to work with Chinese acrobats for the first time, I mean a lot of Chinese acrobats, to a more worldwide story. And I would say that Violaine's music is one of the major links in making this a really universal type of story.
Wonderful. Well, Lynn Heward, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Doing Corradi.
Thank you for having me.
Drachlion
That's right.
opens
getting
late
better.
August, about August 17th, down in the Minneapolis riverfront.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Nice
you.
to have you here.
Thank you.
Nice work.
Little change of pace. If I just fall from grace from God, when a doctor can't save me, if I'm underneath the star, when no angels can't save me, let me go, boys, let me go, boys, let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. Let me go, boys, let me go, boys, let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. This land was always ours, was the proud land of our fathers. It belongs to you and me, not to any of the others. Let them go, boys. Let them go, boys. Let them go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. Let them go, let them go, boys. Let them go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. If I just fall from grace from God, well, a doctor can't save me. If I'm buried beneath the sun, well, no angels can't save me. Let me go, boys. Let me go, boys. Let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. Let me go, boys. Let me go, boys. Let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. If I should fall from grace from God, well, no doctor can't save me. If I'm buried beneath the sun, well, no angel can't save me. Let me go, boys. Let me go, boys. Let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. Let me go, boys. Let me go, boys. Let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. Let me go, boys. Let me go, boys. Let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. Let me go, boys. Let me go, boys. Let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. If I just fall from grace from God, well, no doctor can't relieve river's all run dry. Let me go, boys, let me go, boys. Let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. Let me go, boys, let me go, boys. Let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry. Let me go, boys, let me go, boys. Let me go down in the mud where the river's all run dry.
And welcome back. You are viewing Artifacts. I'm Phill Lindsay, and what we just saw was Mullivan's Edge, two very high-energy women from Nebraska. We had them on this show in May of 1994. I think we met them at the Halftime Rec, doing a set over there. Well, my final guest is David Greenberg. He's involved with an exciting project happening in South Minneapolis. Buenas tardes. Muchas gracias. He knows some of my secrets already. David is one of the developers of El Colegio, which is a school opening in South Minneapolis. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm actually very excited about El Colegio, but for those in the audience that don't know anything about it, David, what is El Colegio?
Well, El Colegio is a new charter school. We're opening up this fall, a high school serving students, 100 students, grades 9 through 12. And it will be a bilingual school, Spanish and English, and focus on the arts and environment.
Which really is exciting to me, and an interesting connection there. I mean, you know, this is a show we talk about the arts all the time. Nice connection to the environment. What was the decision behind that?
Well, really, it grew out of the success we've had with students. We used a program called the PASS program, which was a partnership between arts organizations and schools. And then myself and Carmen Lundberg, who was another one of the teacher developers, we would also take kids out on environmental programs to environmental learning centers, rock climbing, these kinds of things. And the successes we saw with that kind of learning and teaching said, hey, let's do a whole school this way.
That's great. Are you getting some real interest? I would think people would be very interested.
Oh yeah, we've had a lot of interest from students, a lot of interest from potential teachers and the community, so it's exciting.
Reading up on El Colegio, I mean, you make a point that it's open to anybody. I mean, you don't have to necessarily have a Hispanic background to do this, but it will be bilingual.
Correct.
And what will that mean kind of on a day-to-day basis for the students that are involved?
Well, we're seeing a chunk of the day, maybe half of the day will be in Spanish. The idea that all the students and staff will be teaching and learning and communicating in Spanish. Another chunk of the day will be in English. So we have a broad range of students who are learning Spanish, who are learning English, some who are bilingual, some who need to work on their literacy skills in both languages.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact of the matter is, you not only will have English as a second language, but for some of the students, you'll have Spanish as a second language.
Exactly.
So it's a nice blend.
Yeah, and even some of the Latino students are learning Spanish. So maybe they've lived here their whole lives.
And grew up with English as their primary or their sole language.
Exactly.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah. So it's exciting to see these kids be able to explore their roots.
Now, some of us are still learning about charter schools as such. What is a charter school? How is that distinguished from the neighborhood school down the block?
Right. It's a public school, so it's open to all students. It's free, so it's funded by the state. We are funded as our traditional public schools on a per student basis and some other formulas and all that.
Yeah.
Charter schools are freed from some of the bureaucratic nightmares, if you will, of the traditional schools. So we are our own district. So we have El Colegio Charter School, we have a district number. We don't necessarily need to report to Minneapolis or to St. Paul. We report to our sponsor, which is Augsburg College.
So that's one of your partners in this. They sponsor. Now, not to bring up tough subjects here, but I know in the news lately a couple charter schools have had some financial problems.
Right.
And then their relationship, I guess, as you're saying, there is a sponsorship who has some, hands-off or arm's length responsibility to monitor?
Exactly. The idea is for it not to be too hands-off. I think in some of those cases it was too hands-off.
Okay.
So we're really working with Augsburg and other organizations to have more of a hands-on sort of oversight of the finances and of the curriculum and all those kinds of things.
Now, Augsburg being one of the partners, you've got some others as well.
Right. The Department of Natural Resources.
Back to the environmental
piece. And CreArte, which is a Chicano Latino Arts Center and Museum.
Right.
And we will actually be sharing space with CreArte. We'll be located on 42nd and Bloomington.
Okay. That's an existing building down there that you're
Correct,
moving
a
into?
grocery store, a former grocery store.
I think I know the spot. Yeah, that was a landmark down there for years.
Yeah, right across from a park,
Yeah.
Bancroft Meadows.
That's great.
So we'll have gallery space in the school. We'll have studio art space, ceramic space, media technology space, sculpture gallery. It'll be a beautiful space. It'll be really a center. It'll look a lot more like a art center than it will look like a school.
Sounds fun. That'd be a nice place to be as a student then.
Yes, definitely.
Most of our viewers think about the arts, because Artifacts is basically an art school.
Sure.
What will the student, los estudiantes, experience in terms of the arts? What kind of course offerings or activities will they be part of?
We're really seeing our school as an integrated project-based kind of program where we'll be using projects, arts-based projects, to achieve the graduation standards. So for example, students might be working on a mural that will talk about issues of citizenship and immigration. And to accomplish that mural, they'll need to understand certain things about geometry, about math. We'll study the history of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, immigration, citizenship laws, the history of immigration, and start to come up with images that talk about that history.
And the arts are both, in that case, sort of an ends and a means.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the medium, literally, in which some of that's explored.
Exactly. And students can demonstrate their understanding through the images that they create.
And with the gallery space, then there might be a shot at actually getting the finished mural up and on view for a while.
Oh,
too.
sure. We'll have.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have murals that will be permanent in our lunchroom or wherever.
That's great.
Yeah.
And about your estimate about 100 students
kids.
will be involved?
Yep.
That's pretty good. Talk about the teachers a little bit. You're one of them.
I'm
You'll be
one of
teaching.
them. Yep. I've taught in St. Paul for 3 years.
Okay.
In the Spanish immersion program there in social studies, and some of our other teachers have recently graduated from teacher education programs in ESL and Spanish.
Yeah.
This particular teacher is also a ceramic artist.
Fascinating.
Another teacher, while she has not worked in the public school system, has been involved in education for many years. She's a woodworker. She's also done a lot of leading women on canoe trips and outdoor adventure learning.
Okay.
Another man who was involved in Pastors for Peace, has a background in anthropology.
Sounds like everybody brings more than sort of one interest or skill
Definitely.
or background.
And that's what we've been looking for bilingual people with a broad range of skills and a love for working with young people.
Yeah.
And
How big a staff?
we'll have a staff of 9 or 10 people.
Okay, mostly on the teaching side then.
Yeah, one administrator.
Okay. So that's a
who's-
pretty good student to teacher
Yeah,
ratio.
it is.
Yeah.
And we're excited about that.
What's your background? How'd you get into all of this? I mean, I know you said you were teaching.
Yep,
What about
I,
you doing 4 years ago?
4 years. Well, I was teaching 4 years
Oh,
ago.
okay.
We'd have to go back 10, maybe 8 years ago to find something unique. After college, I decided to go to Spain. I really wanted to learn Spanish. And I had studied for a few years in college and got to Spain, and they said, hola, and I said, huh? So I actually spent 4 years in Spain.
Wow, well, that's immersion.
Yeah,
That's
it was.
great.
I got involved in teaching there. I started teaching English.
Yeah.
They figured because I could speak English, I could teach it, which of course I wasn't very successful at first, but I learned.
Yeah.
And then I got involved teaching preparation for the SAT and the TOEFL and the GMAT for students who wanted to come study in this country.
Oh.
So I really got involved in education that way and really made the decision, I want to come back to this country, to Minneapolis, and teach here.
You originally from here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Grew up in St. Louis Park.
St. Louis Park. Where'd you take your college Spanish?
Yeah, I went to college in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania.
Big Hispanic studies department or what?
No.
None of that. Just
No.
took some Spanish.
Took some Spanish there and actually started out studying business, but
Okay. Well, it's a beautiful language. That's to the degree that I took any foreign languages in school. That old classic thing to do was Spanish, and I've learned to love the language. It's
yeah.
glorious.
It's been one of the best things in my life to really to feel like I can speak this other language, communicate with a whole nother culture.
David, we've got a minute or two left. What were the origins? Where did the need for El Colegio come from? Who started talking with whom, and why is this thing here?
It was myself and my partner Carmen Lundberg, who I taught with in the Spanish immersion program at Highland. Really seeing the need for a smaller environment for students, a smaller environment for teachers. I knew that I wasn't going to last in a system of 1,500 kids every day. and innovative programming.
Yeah.
And we saw charter schools as this huge opportunity.
And made some connections with your partners. And
Yep, with George Sand, who was also involved in this PASS program that I mentioned earlier, and Armando Gutierrez, who's the director of Crearte.
Right.
And he was also an artist we worked with at Highland. So it was really a nucleus of...
nice synthesis.
Yeah, it was really an organic process, I think.
If I know you've been based over at El Mercado,
Central, yeah.
Bloomington and Lake Street, South Minneapolis.
Correct.
That's kind of your interim office.
Exactly.
But if people wanted to find out more about El Colegio or get information about it, there's a phone number they can call?
That number is 612-728-5466.
That's great.
And again, we have our office at the Mercado Central on the second floor. You can make your way through the maze up there and find us there.
Buy some nice things on the way up or on the way out. And,
Actually, at the Mercado Central, this is their first year anniversary coming up here real soon.
It's been that much, hasn't it?
Yeah, so stop on down there.
Congratulations to
Yeah.
that. Look forward to El Colegio.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here,
You'll be
David.
hearing more about it.
Good. Look forward to that. Who Wants to Marry a Survivor? That's the name of the new show at Brave New Workshop. Here's the scene.
Hello, may I help you?
Yeah, I'm just looking for a stereo for my basement.
Well, you've come to the right place. This is Stereo Stands, the nation's largest stereo emporium.
Well, that's hard to believe. There's only one little room here.
You can't measure this, can you? Ha 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 ha. I'm Stan.
Baldwin, Jeremy Baldwin.
Do you have any idea what kind of capacity you want your stereo to have?
Can you hang on a second? Are you talking to me?
Yeah. Who else would I be talking to? We're the only two people in the store.
Okay, well, who's he?
Me? I'm Stan. I just introduced myself.
Oh, I get it. This is some new sales technique. You guys are in stereo.
Whatever you say, Mr. Baldwin. Look, do you have any idea what kind of capacity you want your stereo to have?
Just basic recreational purposes.
Something for everyday wear and tear? Something you can rock out to while slamming some beers to celebrate the 4th? But also something that can wind you down at the end of the day, or put you in the mood to make love.
Whoa! I didn't say anything about making love.
We all make love, Jeremy. May I call you Jeremy?
No.
It's nothing to be ashamed of, Jeremy. We all make love.
Okay, you guys are making me a little uncomfortable.
Good. I think this little beauty will do the trick for you. It's a Yamaha stereo sound receiver, model RX7000 with 15 memory presets. That's 3 more stations than are even offered in the Twin Cities area. Combine this, along with a top-of-the-line AW400 CDC DVD player and some A60 or A80 Boston acoustic speakers, and you're ready to make love with me.
Okay, you know what? I'm not buying a stereo from you freaks, okay? I'll see you in hell. And that goes for you too, I guess.
Well, it looks like it's just me again tonight.
Very nice, gentlemen. John Sweeney, that actually made my palms sweat. That was pretty darn good. Would you introduce these folks for us right here?
Sure, this is Todd Weber, Dan Hetzel, and Jim Robinson.
And they're part of the cast of the new show, or the show that's running now at
That's
Brave
right.
New Workshop. What's the show?
Who Wants to Marry a Survivor? The best of the Brave New Workshop.
And I think that's one of the best titles of a show I've heard in years. That's great. Congratulations.
So far, it's been great. Summertime's usually slow, but this show's been selling out.
Yeah, I heard that you're driving them in.
Yeah.
They're coming in. For folks who don't know, where is your theater?
We're down at lovely Calhoun Square, a great place to spend an evening or a weekend.
Yeah, or just with these guys
That's
back
right.
here.
Corner of Hennepin and Lake.
That's right. Nice venue for it. And if people want to call, get tickets, get reservations?
612-332-6620.
That's great. And you're already rehearsing the show coming up later, right?
That's right. The new show in the fall is a political show, and it's called Dull Man Running.
Good timing. John Sweeney, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Gentlemen, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Oh, man. We'll be back right after our events calendar. Stay tuned. And welcome back. I hope you've enjoyed all the guests we've had on Artifacts. I believe that Danny Lord, or it might have been the Duck, guest number 600 in all these years that I've been hosting Artifacts. If you've seen anybody on the show, you want to learn more about what we've talked about, El Colegio or the Brave New Workshop, call our hotline, 673-2234. I also like to mention at the end of the show an accessible performance or two. The Jungle Theater will be presenting Silver Lake. It will be audio described Thursday, August 10th, and then interpreted in American Sign Language on the 17th of August. That's in South Minneapolis at the Jungle. Oh, and by the way, a new magazine published here in Minneapolis, Mizna, from the Arab American point of view. It's prose, poetry, and art. And I've been told it's the only magazine of its sort published in the United States of America. So congratulations, and from what I've been reading, it's a good magazine. And I'd like, at this point, to wrap up Artifacts by reading from a poem, one of my favorite poets, E.E. Cummings. One of the nice things about television, it turns any room into something of an enormous room. Here we go. I sing of Olaf, glad and big, whose warmest heart recoiled at war, a conscientious objector. His well-beloved Colonel Trigg, West Pointer most succinctly bred, took erring Olaf soon in hand. But, though an host of overjoyed non-coms, first knocking on the head him, do through icy waters roll that helplessness which others stroke with brushes recently employed, anent this muddy toilet bowl, while kindred intellects evoke allegiance per blunt instruments. Olaf, being to all intents a corpse, and wanting any rag upon what God unto him gave, responds without getting annoyed, I will not kiss